Welcome to the Monthly Movie Dispatch, the movie review show from friends you can trust. Every week we broadcast a review of a new film, talk about some film news, and recommend what to watch. We've been talking, critiquing, and gushing over movies since we were in high school, and we aim to bring you honest conversation on relevant cinema. I'm Derek Deal. I'm here with Brandon Bowlby. How you doing,
Hello.
Brandon? How you doing?
Doing good. Doing really good. How's it going?
Good, good, good. We are here to talk about The Last Duel, Ridley Scott's new movie.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you and Sean for covering over the last couple weeks. You guys have been
Uh,
really holding down the podcast, just the two of you.
Holding down the fort. It's like
Yeah.
my fourth episode in a row.
Jeez. Is it? It's not getting overwhelming yet, or is it kind of annoying?
Definitely not overwhelming,
Yeah. I mean,
but
it's just
I
talking about
do
movies, I
feel
guess. But
I do feel the difference of when you had that like one gap every other or every couple weeks.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean we got good movies to talk about, so it's been easy.
Yeah. Well, good, good. Yeah. So thank you guys for doing that. Me and Nick are really busy. I just moved into a new house. I'm in a new place. So hopefully,
Congrats.
thank you. Hopefully it doesn't sound too weird. I'm gonna try to get some soundproofing eventually so it's wooden floor than four walls, So probably, I assume it's gonna be somewhat echoey more than normal, but I don't know. I
Yeah,
guess we'll
you
see.
got that good internet connection.
I do. That 1.2 gigs down.
Oh
It's
shit.
pretty sweet.
Okay, that's pretty fire.
Yeah, but it doesn't usually actually get there. They just up to that. Anyways, so yeah, that's really cool of you guys. I'm glad you guys have been enjoying the movies. We're in a big movie season, and theaters are kind of starting to. We're getting box office stuff is it's not back to normal, but it's feeling like the industry's kind of alive again. I think, and
Yeah,
people
people
are
are giving box office reports and numbers and predictions, just
yeah.
like, so many big movies coming out right now. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it's a different landscape, but I think you know, it's still good, and we're in a lot of good movies this month, especially. So, including Ridley Scott's got I think another movie after this that still comes out this year. So we wanted to, before we jump into this movie, is just talk a little bit about Ridley Scott, because he's
Hmm.
very influential filmmaker. He's been around a long time. I know we all kind of grew up watching his movies, and he's 83 years old, and he's still just pumping out movies on the regular.
It's
So,
pretty crazy. I feel like a lot of different generations have grown up with a
oh
lot
yeah,
of his movies.
oh yeah,
Like when you said that, it made me think of, yeah, I did grow up with his movies, but it's not the movies you'd think of.
right.
It's like a different decade of his movies, but
Yeah, he has I was thinking in my head that he has generations of movies, because there's sections where I'm I've seen every one of these movies, they're all amazing. And then there's
mhm,
a list of 10 movies I haven't seen any of. And
mhm.
yeah, because his career started all the way back in the 60s.
What? Oh, you're
Yeah.
gonna say 70s.
No, well, so his TV career looks like started in the 60s, but his first film was in 1977, The Duelists, which I think I just saw Nick watched, I think, recently. I saw
Oh,
it
really?
pop up on
Okay.
his letterbox, and I know that movie's famous for having some of the most realistic sword fights.
Okay.
I think it's a fencing movie, but it's kind of the real fencing,
Interesting.
or what fencing's based. I don't know. It's it's still violent. It's a
Really
violent
paid
thing.
off here, like
Yeah,
50 years later,
yeah, that's
and
true. Oh
Last
yeah,
Duel.
you're right. The duel and the last duel.
Yeah.
Oh, I honestly was kind of thinking. I was I wonder if there's any like metaphor to this movie coming out right now for him. If he's done with these epic medieval things, or if it's just it's just a movie and it doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I kind of want to get into like his form on this when we
yeah.
start talking about it. I had some ideas on that.
Okay. Well, so his second movie he ever made was Alien, and I know for everybody, I've never met someone that doesn't love Alien, and it's
Yeah.
such a staple in the horror genre and the sci-fi genre, and it really started pushing this new era of sci-fi that he kind of was at the forefront of. I feel for a long time. Alien, my grandma showed me Alien when I was 10, Like,
Yeah.
it was a big movie, and I know like my
I
family
saw
thought
Aliens before Alien,
I might
but
have
going
to, but
yeah,
yeah,
it's a perfect thriller, like
it's so good.
sci-fi horror thriller. It's
Yeah,
incredible. Actually I'm surprised you said it was the second movie, but I know we have a
yeah,
lot to get through.
yeah. And then he followed that up with Blade Runner, which
Holy fuck, that's his third movie,
yeah, we're three
which
films
I mean
in. He's at Blade
is
Runner
possibly
already,
his like his film of films. Like,
right?
if he goes down for anything, and it'll end up being that Blade Runner film
Blade
in the
Runner
film
will. I mean, I think
canon.
he's got a lot of movies that'll live forever, but I think Blade
Right.
Runner has like the stake of like really like it kind of planted the flag in like this is what we're gonna call like cyberpunk
Hmm.
or whatever there's other terms for that kind of world, but that was really like the beginning of it, at least in like a visual way, visual medium.
Yes, just so much style dripping from that movie.
Yeah,
It's insane.
and it's hard, like no one that taps into that like genre can really do anything without like using that as a frame of reference because it's just
Yeah.
so definitive. Great.
Yeah.
He also did I didn't know he did the 1984 Apple commercial. You remember that thing?
Oh, yeah.
The
I know what
Mac
you're talking
commercial.
about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
yeah, yeah.
directed that. And then
Okay.
Legend. I've heard you talk about Legend, I think.
No, I
You
have
saw?
not seen Legend.
Oh, okay. Legend
My bad.
is, I think that's, no, I think there's two movies that I get confused. It's Willow and Legend. You've seen Willow,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Willow was like one of
Okay.
my childhood movies.
That's
Not
what I was
Legend.
thinking.
Never saw
Okay.
it.
All right. Yeah, Willow, I think, is the Val Kilmer one, and Legend
Yeah.
is the young Tom Cruise fantasy
Okay.
epic movie. So,
Actually,
Black,
sounds fascinating.
yeah, I heard it's really good. But followed that up with Black Rain, which I did see when I was younger, but it's kind of like a gritty crime drama in China, I think, starring Michael Douglas.
Okay.
And then another big classic, Thelma and Louise,
God. Yeah. Right.
which I've seen that before. I just don't have a real robust
Yeah,
like
that was one of
opinion
my.
on it.
That movie is just like. I actually don't know if I would have pinned that to Ridley Scott looking back now, but maybe
Yeah.
I knew it at the time. That was one of those high school movies that felt important to watch,
Hmm.
and I definitely checked out back then. But yeah, it's kind of slipped by. I don't feel like maybe people don't talk about it too much anymore. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's still like the chemistry of those characters is still kind of an inspiration for a lot of buddy movies and like road trip movies, and it's got a really famous ending, and yeah. Then entering the late '90s is when he goes on his like tear of just
I
like
mean, that's like not a dense filmography for like 2.5 decades you just listed.
no, no, not
Um,
really. You're right.
yeah, he
Yeah,
really picked and chose back then, especially when he could have done a lot.
yeah, because that was from '77 to yeah '91 was Thelma and
Hmm.
Louise, and those were all hits, I believe.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and most of them are very well remembered. But then this is when he just like takes off. So 19
This is when he takes off. Okay.
yeah, so in 1996 he has White Squall, which was it was like a Jeff Bridges thriller movie. I never actually saw it, but I remember hearing a
Yep.
lot about it. I was too young for it. And then we got G.I. Jane, Gladiator, Hannibal, Black Hawk Down, Matchstick Men, Kingdom of Heaven, A Good Year. Well, so okay, so I'll say from G.I. Jane to Kingdom of Heaven, I've seen all of those movies. Gladiator, Hannibal, Black Hawk Down, especially like Gladiator, Black Hawk Down, Matchstick Men, and Kingdom of Heaven were all movies I feel like we'd regularly talk about in high school. Like they were all pretty awesome movies, and I can't hear you. Uh oh, Brandon's got some mic issues. Um, but I'll keep breaking down the list. So G.I. Jane, I did see that one, but I just don't have much of an opinion on it because it's been so long since I've seen it. But that was in '97. Gladiator in 2000. I think Gladiator is when he really kind of cements himself as like one of the big tentpole blockbuster directors, at least of that era. Because Gladiator 1, geez, it won 5 Oscars: Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Costume Design, Best Sound, Best Visual Effects. So, yeah, and that's when he kind of starts to cement his legacy as like this epic director and starts to, um, kind of lay that foundation of what big epic blockbusters are going to look like for the next couple of years. With that opening battle scene that's so huge and so epic, and Lord of the Rings kind of follows in that style, and then all the movies that were really coming out in that area in that decade, really followed that whole train of thought. uh, what do we think Brandon's thinking right now? Wait, Brandon, can you hear me? Can you nod if you can hear me? I cannot hear you, Brandon. Hold on just a sec while Brandon gets this figured out. Let's pause. Ooh. What just happened? Brandon, if you watch back on this, there's a really funny moment that just happened. I can't hear you.
Hey,
Hey,
there. Was it deafen?
I think so.
How'd you hit deafen?
I have a plus, I think, is deafen.
All right, let's keep going.
What happened? I'm so
I
confused.
think you hit deafen on accident.
I didn't press anything. Huh. Weird.
Yeah, you got deafened. You deafened yourself.
Weird. I had no hands on anything. Oh well.
Okay.
Um.
I'll see
Okay.
if I can go into the YouTube editor and snip it before we export it.
It was a really weird. Something visually strange happened. Like
What?
you like went out of screen, and then you went black, and then your picture reloaded back on the screen.
Oh, I shut off Discord and turned it back on.
Oh, it like shrank. It was really strange.
Let me check to see if we're still live. Just real quick.
Yeah, we're still alive. I can see
Yeah,
it.
we are.
All right. That's so weird.
Okay,
All right, let me
let's do
get
it.
back to Ridley Scott's thing. Oh yeah, so I was just saying that Gladiator was like a really big moment. I feel like in his career and in the film industry, like it kind of, that was when epics kind of came back and
Yeah.
became like a really big deal. And with that movie like winning Best Picture and like
hmm
the just awesome opening battle scene, I think that kind of helped Lord of the Rings like to its success.
Yeah, and a
And
lot of a lot of movies to follow that we're
yeah,
still seeing to this day. But like
yep,
Gladiator meant a lot to me. I mean, one Best Picture. It I owned it on DVD and watched it all the time.
Hmm.
That was like one of my all-time favorite movies back in high school,
Yeah.
and I loved the hell out of that movie.
Yeah. It's just like the scale of it was just something that wasn't. I mean, or at least like out of movies that we were watching at the time in our age, which didn't really see something that big that often, you know. And then Hollywood jumped on that train, and
Yeah, almost too much
just
so.
yeah, exactly.
Troy came out.
Troy,
Yeah,
yeah. There's so many, including what Kingdom of Heaven, which I think we liked a lot.
yeah.
At least I
I mean, there's
remember.
in his notorious director's cut, which adds
Yeah,
so much to the movie,
yeah,
and it's really good.
yeah. But I remember a lot of people really disliking it too, and it was like Gladiator. There's Gladiator was really well received, and then all the Lord of the Rings movies, and then Kingdom of Heaven, and I think people felt like he was jumping on like the Lord of the Rings train.
Yeah, people were kind of over mobs of people running at
Yeah,
like
yeah, exactly.
walls.
Yeah. But it was still really good. And yeah, so that run was Gladiator, Hannibal, Black Hawk Down, Matchstick Men, Kingdom of Heaven.
Oh, Black Hawk
Yeah,
Down
Black
is
Hawk
just
Down.
like one of my ultimate movies back then.
Yeah,
I loved that movie. It's so good.
it's a really solid war movie. And yeah, it's I always forget that that was him because
Yeah. And
that feels like a very different kind of movie for him, you know.
yeah, I mean, hearing you list off his whole discography, I mean, it's kind of the only time he's dipped into something like that.
Yeah, something like hyper real,
Hmm.
like yeah. And then he goes into the era that I didn't really pay attention to at all, which is from 2006 to 2010, looks like. And it was a good year. It's like a Russell Crowe movie. Never saw it. American Gangster, which is I want to say that was Denzel and
Yep,
Russell
yep,
Crowe, right? I think.
yep.
Never saw it. Body of Lies. It's like a Leonardo DiCaprio movie. Never saw it. Then more Russell Crowe with the gritty reboot of Robin Hood. Never saw
Right.
it. Uh, and then I start to kind of buy back in with Prometheus, which I
And we, me
really,
and you, again, are big like defenders of
yeah,
Prometheus.
yeah, I really enjoy
Like
Prometheus.
most of that movie is a masterpiece.
Yeah, it's a very, back to his like sci-fi stuff that he just has such a firm handle on creating like original, just stuff that looks cool and feels unique. And even if it's not, whatever you want to say about its connections with aliens or how much they're trying to tie it in, like I think it works really well on its own.
Yeah.
The Counselor, never saw that.
It's like a really ambitious drama.
Yeah, I think so. And then we get back into another epic. He does Exodus, Gods of Kings,
Oof.
which I heard that was like the controversial one, some whitewashing casting, and I think it was like Christian Bale plays like a Egyptian or something, and yeah, it just gets not a well received movie. But then The Martian, like this guy's all over the place, and these are one right after another. The Counselor was 2013, Exodus Gods of King was 2014, The Martian was
And he's
2015.
he's straight up in his 70s at this point,
Yeah,
like making whatever the hell he wants and
yeah.
having fun, like making The Martian.
The Martian's
Um,
it's really fun. I mean, I don't think it's best comedy winner,
I just rewatched The
but
Martian on a plane ride a few
yeah,
months ago.
yeah, it's an enjoyable like light like sci-fi movie. I think.
Hmm.
Then Alien Covenant, which I really enjoyed, but I don't know if I've ever met anyone else that really liked it. I don't know what your opinion is on it,
I
but
mean, you
I
always
had a
get this
blast.
clean Ridley Scott film, but like
Yeah,
I had a lot of issues with that one. I love Prometheus, but I can't really stand behind
Alien
the
Covenant.
sequel.
Yeah, and then the crazy All the Money in the World, which I heard was great. I never saw it,
Yeah,
but its production is just like a wild
story in and of
ride.
itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I saw it. Really good movie.
yeah, cool. And then here we are, The Last Duel, 2021. He's got House of Gucci coming out this year as well.
Two
And
movies in one.
yeah, and then he has four more movies like announced. So and he's
Ridley
83,
Scott
so he's just
is prolific. It's cool to hear all these movies up against each other over the course of like 5 decades at this point.
mm-hmm.
Obviously, he has ups and downs, but through all of it, there is like you can always expect a level of quality and competence,
Yeah,
even if some of them don't necessarily come together.
yeah,
But also, there's just like remarkable movies throughout.
yeah, absolutely. And really like important, just like important movies, you know,
Yeah,
that have
in the
really.
canon of cinema,
Mm-hmm. So um yeah, that's Ridley Scott. What a crazy, it's crazy how prolific he is,
for sure.
and really happy to see that I don't think he's quite lost his touch. So
Yeah.
um
Spoiler for our review.
yeah, well, I mean, it's getting good
Let's
reviews, let's
let's
just say.
let's do it.
Yeah, let's jump in. So The Last Duel is Ridley Scott's newest movie. It's another medieval, I guess you could kind of call it an epic. It's a different take on the medieval genre, I think, in a cool way. So, quick well, not quick, but the plot description of the movie is: Jean de Carouse is a respected knight known for his bravery and skill on the battlefield. Jacques Legris is a squire whose intelligence and eloquence makes him one of the most admired nobles in court. When Legris viciously assaults Carouse's wife, she steps forward to accuse her attacker, an act of bravery and defiance that puts her life in jeopardy. The ensuing trial by combat is a grueling duel to the death.
What is this?
This is the description of the movie that I found on Google.
Is it a plot overview or
Yeah.
a
I mean, well,
synopsis?
you know, to be fair, this is kind of a hard movie to write a synopsis for because um it's a bit more heady than your regular medieval movie. You know, it almost feels like Ridley Scott has like he knows what this kind of movie like tastes like he's done so many of these medieval
Hmm.
swords and shields like kind of movies. He knows how to make it look and feel the way we are hoping it looks and feels.
Hmm.
But this movie, just because of the plot and the context, it's kind of a different take on that whole thing. And that's still there. You still get that like Ridley Scott epic battle scenes and like, gruesome fights. But I think what makes this movie work really well for me is its script and its dialogue are really really
Hmm.
sharp, and it's a really cool. It's just a really, for me, this was such a refreshing movie
Agreed.
in a lot of ways. So I'll start with real quick. I saw it at the Marysville Theater, which I haven't been to. God, like honestly, if I'm thinking back the last time I went there, I think it might have been The Last Airbender. That's how
Oh
long
no.
ago it
Is this
was.
your closest cinema now?
It is.
Oh no.
But I will say, so it's the Marysville Regal. I think their last upgrade that they did in that theater was when stadium seating started to catch on. So
Okay.
they haven't like done anything except for maybe put in some new seats and probably some new projectors and stuff. That being said, I had such a good experience watching it there.
All right.
It was really cold. I'll say that. Like I had a coat
Yeah.
on and I was still freezing, but
A little
there was
chilly.
something like that felt really cool about sitting in like a theater that was that like the screen's high enough so when a tall person sits in front of you, you can still see it. You remember when they used to have to deal with that kind of stuff?
Hmm.
Something about that made me really enjoy this movie even more because
Sitting in these old rickety seats, not
yeah,
a
well,
giant like
they were
couch.
nice. They were still nice seats. Like they're fairly new seats, and the screen was crystal clear, and the audio was great. It was just in this old environment, so it was
Hmm.
like, it felt, I don't know, it just felt like, like it used to feel when I was younger and went to the movies,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
that
I'm
was a
I'm glad that you had a good experience in your first time back and now your closest movie theater to you.
Yeah.
So,
And honestly, like I was like, do I just make the 40-minute drive to AMC, go watch it in like, comfy seats? But I'm really glad I didn't because this is going to be much easier for me to go see
yeah.
movies at this theater, and I'm glad to know that I still can really enjoy the experience there.
Mhm.
without
without
just
your RTX
yeah, not
Dolby Atmos.
yeah, exactly. Like we were so spoiled by Dolby, but yeah, so that was really fun. Um, and I was like the only one there, which was also interesting. Like fine.
Yeah.
But back to the movie, the actual movie. What?
And you said a lot of interesting stuff
Oh yeah,
about
yeah,
the how the story goes, right? And
yeah,
it's a different take and it's refreshing. I totally agree. Like this movie is a drama. It's a drama, and
yeah.
you get a few sparse epic scenes, but for the most part, you're with characters and you're learning more and more about them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I don't want to say a slow burn because Ridley Scott knows how to pace a movie,
Yeah.
and I was never bored and it was
No,
never dull.
super well paced.
The story keeps moving forward, but I could see someone just like, where's the action? Or like, where's the climaxes and I don't know, where's the peaks and valleys? There's plenty to be had in here though, if you give
Yeah,
it a chance.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I went in here very blind. I didn't, I maybe I saw a trailer a long time ago, but you read that plot
Mm,
description. I was like, geez, spoilers. Cause like you're
I
listing
know.
things off that are
Well,
50 minutes into the movie.
no, I agree. I was totally blind too. I did see a trailer, but I really once the movie started happening, I was like, I guess I had no idea what this movie was about.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
And that's a part of the refreshingness. You're just like,
yeah,
oh, wait,
yeah,
I'm in a courtroom drama like
right, yeah,
in the 1300s. Like I
yeah,
don't know, it's really interesting.
yeah, and everyone really. I guess not everyone surprised me, but I don't know. Like I've kind of grown a little. Like I don't have much of an opinion on Matt Damon these days. He hasn't done anything that's really like blown me away. The Martian was really just like Matt Damon being, his charismatic self on Mars and stuff. But this was like the first time I've seen him in a long time. I feel like really, like grab onto a character and be this is like Matt Damon, like good actor, like playing this specific character. I
Hmm.
really, really
But you
liked him.
believed him
Yeah,
and he was unique.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And it helps that they like rugged, put a scar on his face and stuff like that. Make him
Yeah,
a little,
didn't make him this like strong, pretty face. I mean,
yeah.
the all around the cast is very strong.
Everyone's
Um,
good.
Even Ben Affleck pulls off his crazy transformation here in ways,
Yeah,
and gives that the king, or well, not quite the king, but gives him enough like personality to make
yeah,
it different. And
yeah. Like,
apparently, Adam Driver is a heartthrob, even though I was always under the impression he was a pretty goofy looking guy.
oh
Um,
yeah,
I don't know, but it's like he's like a total heartthrob somehow in this movie, and everyone wants him.
oh, he's such a heartthrob.
I
Everyone's
mean,
into Adam Driver.
did you know this?
Yeah, of course. Remember when they had him with his shirt off in the Star Wars movie?
Oh,
That was like,
that was its own meme though.
I don't. It was. I don't know. I mean, he's a pretty handsome guy. Um, I don't know. Like, I do want to talk about Adam Driver for a minute because every time I see him in things, he's amazing. He's such a good actor. But I've like this movie really reinforced like why I think he's one of like the better like I'd argue that he's one of the best actors working today.
Hmm.
And for me, like this movie really reinforced that because he's like he is kind of a goofy looking guy. Like he's so noticeable. He's like he doesn't disappear into
Yeah, he
characters.
stands out.
He
He's
stands
yeah.
out, but at the same time, he's so like he has such a weird energy about him that it's always interesting and like different and like you can't look away from him. I'm thinking back like watching Girls was like the first thing I remember seeing him in. And
Yeah.
he has such a weird energy in that show that like, your heart kind of like ticks at like a different speed when he's on screen because you're like you don't know how he's gonna act or like what he's gonna
Yeah.
say and like
Snap at any moment.
yeah, and that kind of translates I feel like in most of his stuff because like even like Marriage Story you kind of I still had that same feeling about him because he's so good at navigating all these like the vast array of emotions and like he can get so intimidating so quickly
Yeah,
and then
he's like a
so
cute
charming
puppy, and
but
then all of a sudden he's punching holes in walls, and like, yeah,
yeah and
you feel that in
he's
this movie too.
yeah absolutely and like I could not just every time he's on screen it's like I don't know. He's just so good.
Yep.
He's so so unique and really like I was just thinking like that character put in anyone else's hands would just be that written character, and it could be interesting or not, you know. But in Adam Driver's hands, it seems like it's always interesting, and he's
Mhm.
always has like his whatever it is that like you know he does to these roles. He's just like endlessly magnetic, and
Mhm.
yeah, I thought he stood out a lot in this movie. I would love to see him get like a Best Actor nomination for this.
That's a good idea. Yeah. I would honestly say though, last but absolutely not least, Jodie Comer
Yeah.
is outstanding in this
Yes.
movie. And depending on like which perspective you're watching, is like she brings like a calm maturity
Mm-hmm.
and like with some like character seeping through
Yeah.
this like closed off society, and you get like looks and you get lines of like there's more to her, or she's more clever, she's actually funny, or she's sweet. All the way up until, as we're going through the movie, when it switches some darker stuff, like, and you're actually seeing what this will like, what she is
She's
all
going
about, and
through.
she plays both sides of that so well.
Yeah. She's
I'm
definitely
trying to not get into spoilers, but
no.
like,
Yeah,
yeah.
because this is yeah. And I feel that she's the star of this movie.
Hmm.
You know, it mostly revolves around her. It's just a lot of people are involved in this story, but yeah, I don't want to dive into spoilers quite yet, but you know, the I think part of the originality that we're mentioning is that this story is it is a courtroom drama. I guess we don't really spend a lot of time in the courtroom. It's mostly done in I don't even flashbacks. Maybe I don't know if there's really like a present timeline in the movie,
Right.
but we pretty much see the whole movie from three different perspectives.
Hmm.
Right, the movie's cut up into these three perspectives. I think it's only three
Yep. It's like,
perspectives, and then there's like the aftermath or something. And that's what's unique about it because you don't usually see people play with I don't know what you call that, like what the difference is between these three kind of
perspective.
perspectives, I guess. Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
see like epic medieval movies deal with that kind of thing. That's more of a modern like
Yeah. It's like
it's a
we
modern trope that
Tarantino'd this like 1300s film.
yeah, exactly. And from Ridley Scott, you know, he's not one I can't think of anything where he really deals with that, like
Hmm.
approaching a scene from three different perspectives, you know, and shooting all different sides and angles of it.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. It's really well put together. Like you said, really well paced because once it switches to, you know, I had no idea that that's what this movie was at all. And once it
Yeah.
switches to, you know, the second perspective, you're like, oh, okay. So, okay. And then you're, you know, starting to, there's a lot to think about and a lot to cross reference in your head while it's going. And like, it was just such a
Oh,
cool, unique pace for this
so
kind
many
of
things I
movie.
want to jump in on, but I want to go
Yeah.
into spoilers for it.
Well, what
Maybe
do you
we
have any
should.
other non-spoiler things to talk about?
No, it's
This movie's
like,
pretty spoiler
see
heavy.
it. I was
Yeah.
super into this movie. Go see it.
Yeah.
I kind of want to get into details.
All right. Yeah. Let's just jump into spoilers then. Um, all right. From here on out, spoilers. You should go see it, and if you don't want it spoiled, stop listening. So, um, yeah. I mean,
When
do we want
did
to
it
do
ever
like a?
do? Did it ever do chapter one, or did I miss that?
It did. So it opens with the glimpse of the duel, and then it jumps into chapter one.
Okay, maybe I like looked down at my chair, or like my head. I don't know, for a millisecond, because when it got to chapter two, like
Yeah.
that was the first time I
Oh,
thought I'd seen
wait.
it.
You know what? It does the chapter one. I want to say after it like goes through. We see the battle scene and everything. So it starts with the duel, and then it does the battle scene, and it kind of runs through him and Adam Driver's relationship, and then I think before like the nexus of this these stories hits, that's when it jumps into the chapter one,
Yeah,
and
I
then it
mean,
tells his perspective of the incident.
I didn't know what this movie was doing or where it was going, until a bunch of things happened pretty quickly at the end of the first act.
Mm,
When she claims she's been raped,
yeah.
they go to the courtroom, and he's like, trying to prove her innocence, and then all of a sudden we cut to Adam Driver's perspective and revert the whole timeline. And when
Yeah.
that happened, I was just like, "Oh my God. Like this is a whole world I didn't know we were going to get out of this movie."
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like,
And
oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your thought there.
and I didn't know how they were going to navigate that. And you were bringing up the shifting perspective, and you're like, this movie really is about these subtle things that are changing throughout, and these little pieces of new information, and how each person sees their perspective from a different angle, and either sheds their own light, um, like kindly,
Yeah.
on each of their
Yeah.
individual stories.
And it's really smart. Like that just having these perspectives without having to dive too far into like all this vastly different like dialogue and stuff, it adds so much to the characters
Mhm.
because we learn through their perspectives how they view themselves and the world. And that's really cool. Like what a great like ingenious kind of plot device to help us like
Mhm.
relate and or learn about our, you know, characters. It's I think this
And
movie's really, really cleverly written. Like,
and maybe I was like naive,
mm,
like towards the end of the second chapter, because I don't know, like in my head I was like, we have our two conflicting guys that are dueling. We're just getting two sides of the story. Then it's going to go back to the duel.
yeah.
And then when it went to chapter three, I don't know if you're supposed to think of it that way. I was like, oh my God,
No,
like
that's
obviously,
exactly. Yep, that's right where I was. I was like, okay,
okay,
so well, because you don't. It's hard to know like nowadays, like where who stands where, like what you know. Who knows? Like in a clever movie like this, like it was already surprising me so much. Um, I really wasn't expecting more surprises, like,
yeah.
which
And
is
then we
cool.
start over again from
Again,
her
you're like,
perspective. And
whoa, okay.
maybe I'm wrong, but was hers the only one that was like the truth
Yeah. So
stayed
when
on the screen longer,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
um, yeah, and then it tells everything from her perspective, and you know it fits. It works so well too because you know there's a certain mindset when we see characters in this kind of movie from like this genre. You know, the medieval or the fantasy. You know, Game of Thrones or Gladiator. You know, there's like a misogynistic undertone to everything because that's how it was. You know, and so it's really you don't like you know that's gonna be there, but you don't really think about how it kind of like makes you think about. For me, it like made me think about other movies too because I'm like how many of these movies are told from like these guys' perspective, and it's like what a fascinating thing to approach it from that. I just don't know that we've ever seen a movie like this told from the female perspective in that era, you know, and
In that era. Yeah.
yeah,
I
and so it's just
There
a
was some,
really fresh ground to cover.
maybe we could go through a few of our favorite differences that surprised us. I mean, there's a big one that, covers the whole gamut of like each story, but like I really appreciated the difference because it started out with Matt Damon's arc,
Mm,
and I was actually kind of into their relationship in his
yeah,
arc. I was like,
it seems so
obviously
great
this
and
is a
like
horribly sexist society, but like within that he's kind of like enabling her and uplifting her in the ways that he knows how, or that their society could possibly have let happen.
yeah,
So like, he's like kind of on the good end, and she sees that in him, and like, I don't know, they're cute together.
yeah. He
And I
feels really
appreciate it.
noble and like
Yeah,
yeah,
but not in like a totally obvious way. He's
right.
not like, still within the confines of their society.
Hmm.
And then when it gets to her perspective, also they're smart enough not to just tip it on its head and
Yeah,
just say that he's a total piece of shit as well. But we see him doing all the same things, but just with like a little bit of a darker tone to it,
hmm,
and just a little bit of a more like negative, sexist, misogynistic tone.
yeah,
And it played really well because the flip isn't like polar opposites, but
yeah,
he just kept doing all these little things. You saw her not as into him as we thought originally, and still being more forced to do things she didn't want to do. And
hmm.
it plays out in like a dozen scenes
I
that are
think that
really detailed.
that's what makes this movie such a fun movie to watch, even while it's like, you know, it's a drama. There's not a lot of action, But I think like what you're talking about right there starts to really challenge us, like as the viewer, because it already established our opinion of that character, and now they're like, well, that's how he saw it, like, and now they're starting to challenge us, and it kind of pushes you to like you have to come up with a new kind of
Yeah.
opinion about that character, you know,
Yeah.
going forward. Especially we know what's looming overhead, which is this
Yeah.
duel.
And at the
And
end, that opinion gets very obvious and very extreme.
yeah,
But I appreciated that he wasn't just like beating her from the get-go, and it's like, oh, it was like more subtle and intricate and nuanced than that.
yeah,
Um, until we get to the end, obviously.
yeah. And yeah, it's like I said, I think it's just really, really cleverly written. I wanted to point out the writers of this movie. Um, so the two stars, you know, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, they wrote this movie together, which is their
Yeah.
first time since Good Will Hunting, I believe.
The first time since then? What
It
the?
might not be true, but I think it is.
That's crazy.
I can. It would be hard to cross reference their filmographies and stuff, but you know they won an Oscar last time they wrote together, and in this movie they brought in a Nicole Hollef Center. I don't know how to say that name, but she was the third person in their writing party, and
Oh, did they each write
oh right,
a
a perspective.
perspective? Is that what you're, sorry, not to jump
No,
ahead. Is that what
no,
you're going to tell me?
no. I was just gonna say I think they wrote a really masterful script together, the three
Oh,
of them,
okay.
and I think you know it was really smart to have that female voice. I think especially for that third act because it's I don't know. It just makes it. It's like they find that new. You know, I'm not gonna say that she wrote it all herself. The third chapter or whatever, but they find a way to really cleverly like drive in like those darker tones that are kind of harder to pick up on, and you know, without
Hmm.
them, you know, they found a way to work it in. Like you were saying, it doesn't feel like ham-fisted or anything. It feels really
Yeah.
natural, and you know, I guess I just kind of imagine that
Yeah.
having a female voice in that script probably really helped find a way to make that feel so natural, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, no, that is interesting that they added a trio to their writing squad,
yeah,
and it turned out this cohesive. And
yeah,
yeah, I also liked when they got to her storyline that we cover a lot of ground that had been seen before, and
mm-hmm,
they knew that we'd be like, oh, like we've seen these scenes,
mm-hmm,
and it kind of turns into like almost a montage
yeah,
of a handful of scenes at the beginning of her storyline. And then all of a sudden we start treading new grounds of like his time gone, a whole year
yeah,
between,
yeah,
and we
like what
start
she
seeing
was
like
doing.
new information entirely, and we slow down a little bit around that part,
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously beyond. But I thought that was clever. We didn't necessarily see everything a third time. We saw like a more sped up version and then a slowed down version of new stuff.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing that's interesting because I mean, you know, we could dive into this stuff forever, but I just want to bring up one last time about the perspectives that makes it such a smart like tool for telling the story is that from his perspective, you know, he left, he was gone in battle, like risking his life every day. All of his friends are freaking murdered, you know, and like it's just a brutal, you know, barely surviving, and then he comes
Hmm.
home and you know he's just kind of annoyed that he had to deal with that while his wife sat at home, but it's such a great and like refreshing thing because it's like that's not what like she wasn't just like sitting at home being pampered, you know, and like find you know when it gets to her
She ran a
perspective,
business in the
yeah,
town.
and she was doing it better than he was, like she was better
Yeah.
at it than him.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just
Do you know what they were trying to say by the fact that he didn't collect the taxes?
I
Were they
thought
saying that he was like he forgot, like he was so bad at running business, or was he saying that he was like trying to be kind to them?
I think it was
And
both. I think it was like I think it was showing that she can be like a someone that's in charge and is not going to let people just skate by,
okay,
but also he was kind of lazy and bad at it.
okay,
You know, and probably he was trying to be nice too. I think he
okay,
generally wanted to be a nice guy. He was just always sent out to war, you know, while Adam
yeah,
Driver got to sit back. count the king's money and stuff like that.
There's things flying in my head. Okay, that's
There's
I
so
think yeah,
much
that makes sense.
there's so much plot in this movie
I,
to talk about, but
I want to point out the detail and the environment.
mm,
I think Ridley Scott does an incredible job of like lingering on people on the side, like sets pieces on the side, toys, other characters like watching, and it just like really fills out this world. Like it feels
yeah,
so lived in and so real. And there's moments all over the place where he's not just focusing on the characters, and there's something like lingering around the shot that just gives it life.
yeah,
And I really appreciated that.
yeah, absolutely. There's some shots in there that were really breathtaking too, and I'm so curious, like how much of it was CGI and how much wasn't. Like when Adam Driver's showing him like the land he acquired,
Oh,
like
and there's just that massive shot of
yeah,
like the castle in the background. It
I
looked
was just like,
perfect. It was just
holy
real.
shit, yeah, it looks so real. I assume like the
Yeah.
castle is probably added in, but I really hope like that was an actual real landscape that exists because it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
like a real valley in France
Yeah,
somewhere. Like,
yeah,
um, yeah,
and
yeah, so much to talk about.
there's so much to talk about, but we're not going to get into
I,
everything. It's a dense movie. It's really dense, and
besides the ending, we need to take a moment there.
no, for sure, for sure.
Okay,
I
making sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it gets to the last duel, which I believe it's called that because it sounds like, from what I learned in the movie, that this kind of trial by combat thing must have been outlawed around the time that this movie took place.
There's a funny line that the king says. He's like, "Wasn't that outlawed a few years ago?"
Yeah, yeah,
And we're just like we're in a time period where trial by combat was just like gotten rid of a couple years back
yeah, yeah.
as a progressive policy.
You're right.
That's funny.
And they kind of make the gesture that, like, well, it still kind of happens, but yeah. Oh man, there's like
That fucking scene. I mean, let's just say like
yeah. Well,
the
wait, just
actual
real
action
quick,
scene.
real quick.
Yeah,
Sorry, this is
go
something
for
I
it.
didn't want to get through without stating that this movie is so well written that it taught me so many things about the like economy and like the like
Mhm.
hierarchy of how kingdoms worked back then
Yeah,
that I never knew. And I've seen 30 movies that exist in this like era, and this movie like takes the time to kind of explain how it works because it's important to the story and like the characters and
the
it
economics of it, right? Like the
yeah,
business
yeah, like
of
the
it.
business of it. They actually you learn like the hierarchy
Yeah.
and like the flow of money and like
You don't
why
just live in a
kings do
castle like
right.
that's your job is to own the castle.
Yeah. Yeah, and like Matt Damon, he's like a war guy. He has a castle and everything, but like he's this low man on a totem pole, and because the politics and stuff, he's the one that always gets shoved out into war. And yeah, it's just it that part was also just really really fascinating
I
and
agree.
helped build
Yeah.
out the characters. And it was like this little thing that a lesser movie just wouldn't even include because it's not
I
super
feel like
important.
I
But
understood everything they were showing us. It was clear
yeah.
and it went pretty in depth for how much other stuff this movie has to focus on.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, like the economics and the world of lords and lands and castles and war made a lot of sense in
Yeah.
this movie.
I kind of felt like I wanted to say it feels like it doesn't feel like an Aaron Sorkin movie, but it got into the nitty gritty details that he likes to get into in a much like warmer and accessible way. Less a cold delivery kind of thing. But yeah, I really really appreciated that, and I think that helped elevate the movie a lot.
Mhm.
But yeah, so anyways, there's the duel, the titular last duel, finally comes at the end of the movie where they have to
The
do
duel is so good
yeah.
and so intense.
It's crazy. This isn't like a Knight's Tale like kind of jousting. Like this is like I think they really wanted to show us like this is why this was outlawed because
Yeah.
this is insane.
You joust, and if no one dies, you joust again, and then you
Yeah.
joust again, and then you fucking like crawl on your hands and knees trying to cut this person's throat
Yeah.
off, and like
Do everything you can to completely maim this person and make sure they can't do anything.
it was incredible
Yeah.
in so many ways. And like I was like floored at what I was seeing in its
Hmm.
intensity.
Yeah. It was really well choreographed, and like the stunt work was incredible, and it just keeps going. It keeps getting more and more brutal, and you're like, it's got to end here. But it's
Yeah,
like,
it's
no, I mean, they did.
escalation
Yeah,
and the storylines of what's happening and who's on what horse and who's stabbing who and what's breaking and who's falling down and like it moves in such a good way through that like 8 minutes or however long it is.
yeah. And there's so much story told in that section without any dialogue or anything. Now that we have this whole back history of these characters, and we know, the personal things they went through, and what each other's specialty is and their background. You have certain expectations of how this is going to go and who's going to win, and yeah, and then it just keeps getting like just worse and worse,
Mhm.
and more like disgusting and like horrifying as it reaches its peak. And
Yeah. Or in the words, not the words, but in the townspeople or the people of Paris, it's an awesome, spectacular, like story thriller to cheer on. Some
yeah,
like, murder mystery courtroom drama, that we all listen to like podcasts and news about, and just to love on the most surface level while people's lives are in absolute danger.
yeah,
And real truth is trying to be told, but nobody cares.
right, yeah, um, yeah. And it's pretty spectacular. Like they do some stuff that I've just never like. Just in a whole, this movie, like the things that they achieve with it are really really special. And with that scene, like I guess I haven't seen like a action, I don't know, violent like hand to hand fight scene that has just done so much storytelling, because there's just a lot going on in that battle. And there's three characters, kind of their lives are in limbo during that whole scene. And it's just like perfectly edited, perfectly shot. You mentioned clarity earlier on with like the script and stuff. I think visually, like it just shows how masterful Ridley Scott still
Mhm.
is. And he's not. I don't. I feel like this is probably going to be one of my favorite movies that he's done. And it's really cool that he's still operating at such a high level.
Yeah. You're saying there's a lot going on that. I think there's also a lot of heavy lifting done in just like four scenes prior to that
Yeah.
of new information and new perspectives going on, like the big twist of what Matt Damon's maybe it's not a twist, maybe you kind of always knew, but why is he doing this? He knew, and then you find out he knew what the consequences were,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like, oh, I mean, he's doing this so he can pick a fight with his old friend
Yeah.
and try to get back at him
Yeah.
at the
Of
cost of everything,
yeah.
including his wife and child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, because at this point he's just had a kid. I think it's pretty recently, right? Do they say?
Yeah, like remember the like maybe it's not the night of, but it's
Yeah.
obviously the newborn's in her arms like a
Right.
child, and he comes in and says like it's time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Like it's a lot. There's a lot like going on there, and
Oh my God,
because
I have so much to say.
I know there's
Everything's flooding in my
that's
head
the
right
thing.
now.
This movie's just too big. Like it's 2.5 hours long. Like it's an epic. There's a lot, and it's just a really dense and spectacular movie. So there's no way we're gonna be able to cover it all. But
Oh my God.
if you don't
And
have any, oh no,
I
go
just
ahead.
want to say,
Go ahead. Yeah.
okay, I appreciated her scene when she's holding her baby and she gives him that speech about what's it worth when she's dead, and
Yes, that was
how
such a good
she
scene.
regrets everything.
Yeah.
Like she would stay silent just to be a mother to this child, and take everything, like as opposed to leaving it an orphan.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's horrible to hear her admit that, but she was like, I would have lied. I would have kept it all in just for this baby.
Well,
Um,
in not to jump too much into like politics and stuff, but that's such a good perspective. Like I feel like that's such good insight on like people that are super against like the Me Too movement, because it's like it gives you such a good, after you've been sitting with these characters and you've seen their perspectives, and you really understand where all three of them are coming from. And then they kind of explain like why people in these situations sometimes don't speak up.
yeah.
And she lays it out flat. She's like, because I now that I'm in this situation, I have this kid, like, is it worth it, you know?
Hmm.
And it kind of shows like the bravery and like just how intense of a life that is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. In the end, and I think like a thing we can talk, like, I don't know if I really like the last shot, but the last
Oh yeah,
moments
I wanted to
as they're
ask.
celebrating and leaving the gladiator arena,
Hmm.
everyone is just cheering for the victory and the kill and the bloodshed.
Yep.
And she is left behind him, sitting on her horse
Yeah.
alone as her husband is like raising his, fist, basically just fist pumping in the air,
Hmm.
right? Like, I fucking won.
Yeah.
And she's just sitting there on the horse behind him, like silent, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I just like that is just a way that's like a way a direction the plot went that I never would have expected um, Matt Damon's character to end up at.
Yeah.
Even with like I guess the happy ending, it is just so
Right.
like
Well, that's
so sad.
it's so like that's I love this movie so much for like it never gives like the audience an easy way out. Like even in
Hmm.
that last shot, yeah, it's like there you go. How do you feel about that? It's like,
Yeah,
that's that ending is
truth
very
prevailed, right? And it's
right.
just like, oh my
Yeah, and
god,
like nobody like nothing's gonna change because of this.
yeah,
It's
nobody
like
cares and nothing changed.
nobody cares. And yeah, it's heavy, and what a great like way to end the movie.
Mhm.
It that totally leaves you with like just a lot of thoughts. You're like, there's a lot to still parcel through when the movie,
Yeah,
credits start rolling, and
all right, I got it out.
that's a sign of a really good movie. Um, cool. Well, I'm glad we both really liked it.
Yeah, for sure.
I really liked it, like a lot. So I want to say, like, I think these three, I would be shocked if they're not nominated for best writing. I have a feeling this movie's gonna be. I mean, who knows? But I feel like it should be a front runner for award season. Like going in here, Ridley Scott's a known name, lots of big stars. It's a historical drama. Like I feel like the
I hope so.
stars would
It'd
align for
be
this. The only thing is it's a dud in the box office. So maybe
that's too
they
bad.
just wipe it away and not even think about it. Who knows? But there's a lot of great stuff here.
Agreed.
Do you have anything else to add? I mean,
No.
besides the million subplots
That's
and
the
different
million else
things we
thing. No,
want
I
to talk
got
about.
everything off my chest. That was really pressing.
All right. Well, I think everyone should just go check out this movie. It's really great. It's not getting the box office I think it deserves, and I think it's one of the better movies I've seen this year. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that is The Last Duel, Ridley Scott's The Last Duel, and yeah, that's it for that. Next week we're in like the home stretch for the rest of the year. I feel like we got Dune next week. There's just one big movie after another. So I think the plan is to review Dune next week. Not exactly sure who's going to do it or if all of us will do it or what's going to go on. But for sure, next week, hopefully Tuesday at 8. Um, but, we'll see what happens.
Can't wait.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you guys just, if you like what we're doing here, like and subscribe. We also have the podcast, just audio version on wherever you listen to wherever you listen to Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. And yeah, see you guys next week. Bye.
Later.
See you.